Check swing towards Bregman.
Hello from the other side. I must have called 1,000 times to tell you I'm sorry for everything that I've done. But when I call, you never seem to be home. Hello from the outside. At least I can say that I've tried to tell you I'm sorry for breaking your heart, but it don't matter. It clearly doesn't tear you apart anymore. Hello, how are you? It's so typical of me to talk about myself.
And good morning, everybody. This is Off Day with Ballpark Nation with your host, as usual, Andy and Jim. And before Andy, we talked about something very seriously. Let's go and get out of the way. Alex Bregman is still not an Astro, and Craig Harmon is our biggest listener.
I mean, those two things have to be mentioned every week. And unfortunately, the Bregman thing is still top of mind, although Astros fans, I'm starting to think maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe we should just, like Dana Brown says, talk about the guys who are here and not talk about the guys who aren't here. And evidently that was the big kerfuffle this week or yesterday when Dana Brown dared to say that they've lost Tucker and Bregman.
Yeah.
Although he quickly backtracked and said, well, we're still talking. I think the situation is, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't been following too closely in the last 12 hours, but he has an offer from the Astros. He could take it. He probably won't. They have to plan like he's not going to be there, and if something changes, it's a pleasant surprise. Is that kind of the gist
That's kind
you're
of the
getting?
thing. And then, of course, the tea leaves are being read. What I think is interesting is the three main teams that are in on him, which is us, Detroit, and the Red Sox. There was some scuttlebutt about the Cubs, but there's not really been a lot of talk about it. But what's been interesting is all of those fan bases think they're not getting him. And I think what's interesting about it is if Bregman had received a better offer than what the Astros were offering, then he would have taken it. But he hasn't. And the issue comes down to, from what I've read, of course, nobody knows. Remember, Nightingale said this thing was imminent. But the issue comes down to apparently the way Jim Crane structured his last contract, that it was backloaded. And so it will feel like if he takes even though the contract will be richer, the AAV will not be as much as his AAV was in 2024. And so he's viewing that as a pay cut.
Which, if you're a professional athlete and you're entering the end of your career, you would expect to earn a little bit less. We're not talking about millions and millions of dollars. I think it's the difference between 28.7 and 28.5 or something. I mean, it's a minuscule number, but it's about ego. I did read something interesting that just posited the question: is Scott Boras the best agent you want if you're a B-level player? Now, I know that's going to rankle some Astros fans a little bit about Alex Bregman being a B-level player, but realistically, at this point in his career, he probably is. I don't know that Boras is really great with those kind of guys because he doesn't seem to have anything but one plan, and that one plan is to hold out for max money, max years, max whatever, unless you are a Jose Altuve type who says, just get it done. I don't care what it really looks like. Bregman's not – he's the top free agent left, but that's only because he's one of the few that hasn't signed. He's better than Pete Alonso. He's a little bit more flexible than Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
But I just don't know that Boras is the guy, and I can say that easily having no dealings with him or never being able to experience that kind of money ever. I just don't know that Boras is the guy that has kind of a level of ask for a guy that's not top of market. And I think that's where Bregman is. He's not a top of market guy. He wants to be paid like one, and I'm sure we all would in his situation. But at some point, you realize that we're now 7 or 8 days away from camps opening up. The Dodgers open up in 4 days because they go play in Japan. It's not going to be a good situation for Alex Bregman to sign late.
No.
I know he works out. I know he keeps in shape. I know we talked about this last week, but he's a notorious slow starter, and I can't imagine missing part of camp is going to make that situation any better.
Yeah, I can't either. And it also just seems like the closer the further into spring training he waits, the even more less likely he's going to get a deal. Like the deal he gets offered when spring training starts will not be as good as the ones he has on the table now.
No.
It's like a 1 or 2 year deal with a high AAV, but that's it.
Yeah, or a 3-year deal with a bunch of opt-outs, and that's where it's headed. And somebody will end up giving him that. I just don't think it's the Astros. And the more we get away from him, I just don't know that it makes sense for us to rearrange our roster to accommodate him. Having said that, he signs today. I'm going to be happy that he's an Astro.
Yeah.
He's a guy that I really like watching play. But I think the Astros, and I think Dana Brown's in the right headspace about we need to move on and talk about the guys who are here.
Yeah, and I don't think that the Altuve to left field is going to stop just because it's a Bregman. I think, well, first of all, Dana Brown said he looked pretty good in left field. He was having fun. I don't know what he would say any other than that, but yeah, I don't think that's going to stop. In part because of the reasons why we discussed last week. Of you've got 3 primarily ground ball pitchers, and you've got a second baseman that's losing his range by the minute at second base. So that's what the root of the move is. I don't think it was just an idea they came up with because they wanted Bregman back.
Human beings like to look for patterns. So we, of course, think, well, if we trade Ryan Presley, then we get Alex Bregman, then we're going to move Jose Altuve. And causation isn't correlation in this situation where evidently there's been discussion about Altuve starting to transition to the outfield for at least a season now. It didn't turn out to be necessary last year, but this year it's gotten a little bit more so. And I can only think in the future it's going to get more so as we help him chase 3,000 hits, which we all want to see him do. We all want to see him get that milestone in an Astros uniform, whichever uniform that is. It might be a new City Connect because that'll be another 4 years from now. So we'll be on our third one. But it's his defense is a liability. It was a liability last year. It's been a liability for a couple of years. And it's almost like talking bad about, certain politicians in this country. You don't slander Jose Altuve. And unfortunately, I think anything that looks like criticism of his play feels like slander to the Astros fan base. I think regardless of what happens with Bregman, you're going to see somebody else take some balls at second base, and Altuve is going to be spending some time in left field. How much that is this year, that remains to be seen. But Dubon can play a competent second base. Paredes has played second base. They were pursuing Jorge Polanco, who was a second baseman. So although I was super scared, I guess it was McTaggart's article yesterday about opening up more opportunities for Shea Whitcomb to play. Again, we can get into the fantasy love that people have for our minor leaguers, but Pedro Leon is not going to put up MVP numbers in left field for Houston. I hope he doesn't play left field in Houston. Shea Whitcomb is not going to be a guy that's hitting 300 in Major League Baseball. We need to give up those ghosts.
Yeah, we need to give up the ghost on that. And it's funny because I just Googled Alex Bregman while we're sitting here, and now there are 3 websites from 3 different teams all saying that Alex Bregman is linked to them. But the Cubs now all of a sudden, and the Astros and the Tigers, and the Astros are seen as, based on Dana Brown's comment. In fact, the Sporting News called the Astros comments harsh. I don't see how they were. I don't see how they were harsh at all. They were realistic.
I'm sure they asked somebody in Scott Boris's office if they were harsh, and Scott Boris said, yes, those are very harsh. I don't like those comments. Those are bad comments for my pocketbook. The Red Sox evidently are kicking the tires on Nolan Arenado as well, or Arenado with the Cardinals. The Astros were in on him for a little bit earlier this winter. So I think the Red Sox have started to pull away and look in alternate directions as well. Bregman's going to find himself playing for the Pirates if he's not careful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like if the Cubs are looking at a 4-year, $100 million offer, which would give him a high AAV, but as you pointed out, with 3 opt-outs. I mean, the Astros could match that, but I wonder if I know this is all Bregman's decision, but and it is. There's no but about that, but he's making that decision in part by information filtered through Scott Boras to him. And Scott Boras could be playing up those comments differently than what you and I saw in the actual interview clip that they posted. So it's very interesting to see where his mind is at when it comes to.
I want the Bregman whose business savvy led him to put those YouTube videos out and to sell salsa and barbecue sauce. Where's that guy? Where's the guy that's seeing that opportunity? I just don't see the opportunities in the other markets he's talking about. But ultimately, it's up to him. And
You can do a lobster sauce in Boston.
I mean, you could maybe some chowder. Maybe you could bottle some chowder.
Bregman chowder. Actually, like a Cajun style chowder, that could be kind of good. A little spice.
I'd throw a little spice in there, a little Tony Sash.
Yeah, that could be good. I guess last thing on the Astros, there's talk of more Shea Whitcomb stuff, but what I am reading really good reports of are the reports on Cam Williams and how he's looked. What's that?
Cam Smith.
Oh, Cam Smith. Sorry, why did I say Cam Williams? I don't know. But yeah, everything seems to be both Dana Brown and Jet Bagwell. I know, but see this kid playing possibly as early as next year. So that's already giving you a little bit of hope if he's really that good. And for everybody, like you said, that's infatuated with our farm system, he came in and immediately became the highest ranking member of that farm system.
Yeah, I mean, what do they do? I am certain there's going to be somebody who is going to be upset, especially if Smith starts getting reps in the outfield, that he's passed up Pedro Leon somehow. I guarantee you that they didn't give Pedro Leon a chance. He's like 38.
I argued
he's 38, playing his 5th year in AAA. He should be hitting 300 there.
I had an argument with somebody about it the other day, and they were like, Kim, he didn't get Pedro Leon did not get his chance. He raked in AAA. And I tried to point out to this guy that, and being polite about it, that the numbers in AAA are often misleading, as we've discussed, because 3 of your ballparks are higher altitude. And he said I didn't know ball. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Okay, thanks. Bye. But speaking of Astros farm systems, I think we saw the best brand refresh in a really long time with the Corpus Christi hooks. I'll put some photos up here while we're talking because I did already get some of my gear in. Did it work for you, and why?
It worked for me. One is, I think it's an addition by subtraction because they got rid of the barbed penis logo. And I know that was probably a grandiose logo because it was certainly a thing holding a bat.
Actually, it was Dan Simon, but same difference.
Okay, but yeah, it followed a model of probably about 10 years ago when everybody in minor leagues got a refresh and everybody had some sort of anthropomorphic thing with eyeballs holding a bat, swinging a bat. And the hook was no different. I know he has a name, but I refuse to use it because barbed penis, as you coined, is the only thing I can see when I see that now. They very smartly took their faux back look and made it their main mark and expanded on it. And they've got a couple of alternates in there. One that if you're a fan of Texas history, the star with the hooks around it spelled out. There's a lot of good things to like about the new look. It's fresh. It looks updated. It also is still close enough to what they've been doing that if you're a fan in a market that isn't, necessarily economically plentiful, like Corpus is or can be, you can still wear your old stuff to the park and feel like you fit in. It's not like the Astros jumping from brick and sand or blood and mud back to their orange and blues. It feels like an evolution of their look more than a redo of their look.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I do like the alternate, like you said, the sparkling city is what they're calling that uniform set with the star and the hooks around it. And yeah, they definitely ran with that faux back look. And to me, it just makes it look. I like all the fun parts of minor league baseball as much as the next guy, but I prefer the fun stuff in alternate brand. I like the fact that the main look is it's fresh and new, but it's also classy and classic, and it's something that really does like you said, just fits nicely, and it fits like this could have been their look for 40 years because it's got that classic and clean of a look.
And I think it's, if you fish, they've been a single hook for a really long time now. They're a double hook in kind of their looks, incorporating the
That
CC on
was
top of
really
each other.
sharp. Yeah.
So that's another new thing that I really like. The embrace of the navy, because I think they've gotten away from that a little bit over the last couple of years. Their main hat is a navy hat, a really deep navy hat with the faux back logo. I guess it's not. I can't call it the faux back logo
Yeah.
anymore because
The
I'm
logo.
sure you're throwing. I'm sure you've through the magic of editing thrown a picture of this up while we're talking about it.
I have.
But it's there's a lot of good things to like, and the second that I can pay attention long enough, I'll be making a purchase through the bait and tackle shop or whatever it is they call it.
The only thing, it's the line and sinker. But
Hook, line, and sinker. I know.
the only thing that's a bummer, and you and I have been talking about this forever, is right now the only 3930 choice is the clubhouse hat. Now I did get it. I think it looks sharp enough. But I'm really looking forward to some of the other hats coming out as a faux back, as a 3930, excuse me, particularly the star with the double hooks.
I would love. I know you have some connections there. I would love to get an answer on why some things are available online and some things are not. Because when we went to the hooks last year,
Mhm.
I filled up on a bunch of 3930 things that I could never get online. And I don't know if it
Yeah.
was just the time of the season. We got there before things were sold out and they didn't replenish, or they make a conscious choice to push the 5950s first. I don't know which is which. It may be a supply issue. I don't know, but I wish the 3930s were more plentiful in all of minor leagues in their
Mhm.
online options, because it seems to be an afterthought in a lot of markets. I do have faith that the hooks will eventually have them. It just might mean that I have to attend a game to get one, or four.
4. Yeah. And I need 3 more. So I like how we said need, like I'll die. But yeah, no, I don't understand that too, particularly when logic, as Spock once said, logic dictates that you'd have everything offered online because you have infinite space online.
I was just looking up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and hats is right there under food, but below faith. So it's right up there.
Right up there. We're good, good,
Yeah,
good.
you can feel good
Um,
about it.
all right. So transitioning again, Andy, you and I are going to handle this show like family. The new Fantastic Four trailer came out, and let me give you my take. So, the only time I'd really ever experienced Fantastic Four was when usually it was a Spider-Man comic where they guest starred or a big crossover event. And so I never felt attached to the characters. I fell in love with that trailer. I love the fact that it's going to be the kind of film that George's going to be able to take Braxton to see, and both of them are going to enjoy it. And I don't think she's going to have to worry about things she's seeing as far as her having a 7-year-old boy. Like Avengers Endgame is not appropriate for a 7-year-old. Not saying that everything needs to be, but I love the fact that there is something about this movie that feels fresh. I love the idea that they're taking it as what if JFK's vision for the 60s really came true, and that's what it looked like. So I love the casting. I know that they kind of went with no names for Johnny and Ben Grimm, but Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic can't go wrong. So where were you as somebody who knows the characters a lot better than I am? Where are you on the trailer?
It's a really interesting set of characters from a standpoint of comics history. As superhero comics had kind of gotten out of favor in the mid 50s, really, and really towards the end of World War II, the whole comics industry had moved to westerns and horror stories and love stories and Archie comics, and that was kind of the vibe. There were very few superhero comics that survived that, except for like Superman and Batman.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four were created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, and they ushered in what many people consider the Marvel age of comics. And so they were the first family of Marvel, and that's where all the family connotation stuff comes from in the film that they're kind of alluding to. But they were the ones that, and I know you and I have a different take on this because I know you want a certain thing out of a hero. Marvel was always so different in that time frame because their heroes seem to have personality, they seem to have conflict, they seem to have things that went bad in their lives. Ben Grimm is probably the biggest example from the Fantastic Four of somebody who couldn't see his value in the world because he was so consumed with how he looked and how he had become a monster to other people, and dealing with that range of emotions and the psychological impact of that. Reed dealing with guilt, Sue Storm being kind of a little bit of a whore, keep flirting between. There was a Sue Storm love Reed Richards, but also like Victor Von Doom, and ran away with the Submariner for a while. So there were all these kind of interesting. I mean, she's got some stuff. And then, Johnny Storm was a teenager who had been granted powers with no responsibility. So it was a kind of a weird juxtaposition to his later in book friend Spider-Man, who had all the responsibility with the power. So that was always interesting. But they kind of set the tone for an entire genre of comics, one that DC caught up to, and in some ways did better in later years. And we talk about the Green Arrow, Green Lantern series, and Speedy being a junkie, and how some of those things were reflected.
The Green Lantern, Green Arrow, racism storyline where.
But all of that was kind of kicked off by Marvel, and the Marvel was kicked off by the Fantastic Four. So it's important from a comics history standpoint. The trailer absolutely blew me away, and that's the general gist I saw from people who were looking at it online and posting comments. It looks fantastic, first of all. It looks completely different than anything else that you've seen in the MCU or really any comic book movie. And 97 seconds or whatever it was of trailer looked better than all three of the Sony/Paramount Fantastic Four movies that had come out before. I don't know if it's going to be better than the best Fantastic Four movie, which was, of course, The Incredibles.
Roger Corman's B movie.
Well, we don't talk about that because technically it doesn't exist. But I'm really excited about it. I really hope that with the three movies that Marvel has coming out this year, that they will get back on the right track. But if you take it just out of the MCU and having as a standalone, it's going to be really close up there with Superman Legacy to me, about two things that look completely different than what their competition from that market looks like. And really embracing, I think the thing that was interesting to me, and I'm rambling a little bit, Superman Legacy, that trailer was all about hope, which is what the Superman character is about.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four version. The Fantastic Four First Steps trailer to me was the same thing. It was hopeful. It was bright. It was great things. Now, knowing what I think is going to happen, and you see Galactus show up at the end of that, and I think their world is going to end because at some point you've got to get these four characters into the mainstream MCU. It might not end up being hopeful and pleasant. We don't know. But I sure hope it is. And I sure hope it's that the feeling they give from that trailer is what the movie is. And I have a lot of faith in Matt Shakman, who's directing the movie, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, I've definitely read a lot of different theories where this movie could actually begin the soft reboot of the MCU, where they sort of work to getting away from, like, whereas these last two Avengers movies could essentially be the end of this particular version of the MCU, and it could be starting with Fantastic Four, or what you just said. One of the things when you study media, you look for reflections of what the society or what the culture is feeling. And I do feel like it's not an accident that Superman Legacy and Fantastic Four went with a hopeful vibe. And I think that we've been, I think we could use hope right now more than any time
Could we?
in recent history. So I think that's not an accident. And I think it's cool that they were able to factor that in with these two properties that for a lot of people already symbolize those things, particularly Superman, like you said. But yeah, I'm with you. What's
Yeah,
that?
something just came across my phone though. Elon Musk just put hope on administrative leave. So
Ah,
I don't know.
did he get a nice thank you for his service at the end of the email or what?
Probably.
Yeah.
Those people aren't going to get paid, but that's it's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess.
Yeah. And we could talk about problems with the public education system all day, and there are a lot, but fixing them is not, you don't fix them by destroying it. You fix it.
So many things that aren't purview of this show.
Yeah, for so many things. But no, I agree. Between Superman and then between Fantastic Four and between Mission Impossible, which will probably be the last, at least Tom Cruise Mission Impossible film. There's a lot to look forward to this summer. And it feels like, because you're also a movie guy as far as going, it feels like as we get farther and farther away from the pandemic, we're returning to normal with more high quality offerings at the cinema.
Yeah. And I know it's partly because of the writer's strike last year, but it's interesting because Elizabeth and I spend a lot of time in movie theaters. It's one of the things we do together, and actually watching the movies, not just hanging out in the lobby. But there's been so many weekends, and it feels like so many weekends in a row for the past almost year that there's nothing to see. There's a handful of movies are out, and there's certainly something that gets released every week, but they're always kind of, I don't know if I'm interested in watching that. I don't know if I want to spend my money on it. I don't know if it's worth the hassle, blah, blah, blah. Whereas recent memory, and really meaning pre-2020, you had like 3 great movies being released every weekend, 3 blockbusters, and the summer was full of every week a new blockbuster coming out. So you had things lined up, and now it feels like you might get once a month where there's something that you can get excited about. And I hope we get back to those days because believe me, we're all going to need the distraction.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that too, as you were talking about how, like, not only did you have usually a big movie almost every week of the summer, but then you also had something counter programmed with it that was also new coming out, usually in like a sort of an R-rated comedy or something like that. So it's definitely become, they're saying the quiet part out loud, where the theatrical run is now just advertisement for the home streaming, where they feel like they're making most of their money. And it's disappointing. It's I wish I went more, but I've kind of been turned off by the fact that even the Alamo Drafthouse is not controlling how crowds react. So I'm a big musical guy. Wicked's my all-time favorite musical. Have not seen it because I didn't want to sit next to some idiot who thought she was on Broadway and singing along. And so we got the 4K Blu-ray in the house yesterday. We'll probably watch it tonight, but I wish that we could go back to treating the movies as something you did, not just something you used to pass time.
Yeah. And I get that. There are some things for me that I am guilty of looking at the trailer, looking at the advertisement, and going, that's something I don't need to see on the big screen, which I know is not how the filmmaker intends things, because everybody wants to see their movie on the big screen and have you experience it that way. But there are some things absolutely that I think need to be seen on a big screen. Maybe that becomes less the bigger your TV gets, the better your sound system gets at home. But Wicked is something I don't regret seeing in the movie theater. Absolutely am not going to wait for Superman Legacy to be streaming. Fantastic Four First Steps is going to be the same way for me. I need to see it on a big screen. I need to see it as it was envisioned by the creators. And I want the spectacle. I want the show. I have found, and we don't have Alamo as prevalent here in Houston, I have found that Regal Cinemas have something called the VIP showings, where your popcorn and your drinks are included, and they charge an outrageous amount for the ticket, but that ticket is just expensive enough to keep the riffraff out. Nobody, I'm a fancy man and I need fancy things, but it's like $30 a ticket, but nobody's bringing their kids to a $30 movie.
I would have 100% be in for that.
So that's if you've got a Regal in your neighborhood, go check out and see if they have the VIP rooms, because it's completely. I mean, you can justify it kind of with the popcorn and drinks being included, but 100% there's no people in there who aren't there to see the movie, because it's almost cost prohibitive for that to be happening.
I love everything about. I wish more restaurants and things like that would do that. Like, here's a surcharge, but the benefit is no kids.
Nobody on their phone. Nobody's on their phone. You have to pay more for it, but
Yeah, nobody's on the phone. Yeah, are you a Mission Impossible guy? Like, is that because that to me that's appointment viewing as well when it comes out.
yeah, see, that's another one that I think you need to see that on the big screen. The great thing about the Mission Impossible movies is they are infinitely, wonderfully rewatchable. So
Definitely, yeah.
I think it's one of those things with that you see it in the theater first, and then you watch it like 50 times because there's things that you miss, or you once the reveal happens, because there's always a reveal, you go back and watch it with the knowledge of that reveal to see what Easter eggs they laid out for you. So no, but that's another one. And I think there are certain tentpole movies that you need to see, and it's usually how loud is it, how big is it. You mentioned Avengers Endgame, that wouldn't have had near the social impact if that was a streaming
Yeah.
event versus a theater event. I think part of the reason that Top Gun Maverick was so well received is because people actually went back to the theaters to see it, and it was loud, and you needed to feel like you were in the cockpit. And I don't know that you get that from sitting on your couch on the television.
Yeah, you're right. I completely agree. And what it's kind of neat, I'm actually working. I'm teaching a curriculum right now for my film critique class on the evolution of Tom Cruise from actor to basically movie star who only cares about fans. Like he's given up Oscar bait because clearly the Oscars are not going to recognize him. And I do think he's actually a very good actor, but just watching them get into the Mission Impossible movies, and especially the first one, which I think goes underrated because the first one was really a spy movie. It became more and more of what crazy shit can we watch Tom Cruise do? And I'm still in for that because to me, I like he only cares about what we think as fans. He doesn't really care about anything else. And I do think you can say without much hyperbole that he really helped save the movie industry with Top Gun Maverick coming out when it did, and then also pulling off Dead Reckoning while shooting during the pandemic and everything they had to do for that. I think he's definitely become an even more pivotal part of the movie industry.
Well, I mean, just watching him run every film. The man's like, I mean, 62, 63 years old. I don't know how old he is, but he sprints. No, who sprints in movies anymore? And I think the thing I like about Tom Cruise is he actually looks like he knows how to run. One
Yes.
of my big movie issues is that you get these actors and they're all very physically fit and they train and but they don't look like they know how to run. Tom Cruise looks like he knows how to run. And it's a stupid thing, but it brings some realism to a movie that has no basis in realism. And it grounds it a little bit where it makes it almost accessible. Like, I could be Ethan Hunt. You can't. You also can't play second base for the Astros, no matter how good you were in Little League.
I will say this as we wrap up the unexpected Tom Cruise
Love fest.
love fest. I think a lot of people, and I think understandably so to a point, think he's a little weird because he's a Scientologist. And he's had the incidents, he's had the jumping on the couch and the whatnot. But I think people don't understand how dedicated he is to craft, where particularly in those Mission Impossible movies, he hires really good directors and he lets them direct. Mission Impossible 2 feels like a John Woo movie. The first one feels like a not an Altman. Why is my Brian De Palma movie? He really does a good job of putting people that know how to make a movie into those positions, and he lets them make.
I mean, as long as they allow him to hang off 100-foot tower or 100-story towers on his own.
I don't know how those movies get insurance by I no I've no idea.
Yeah, it's one of the mysteries. I read it. I couldn't tell you any details about it, but I read an article about all the hoops and machinations that have to be jumped through, and the guarantees that he has to personally make financially. I mean, it's a lot. But I guess he believes that makes a better film. So I can't imagine he's just that much of an adrenaline junkie that he needs to film his stuff. Because you could just jump out of a plane on your own. You could, hang off the rails of a helicopter on your own. Schwarzenegger does that on the weekends. But to film it and make it an integral part of your films, I'm going to hang glide onto a train, I think is the last one, and I'm going to miss it a lot.
Yeah. That train sequence was stressful. Okay. I think now is a good time to share with you guys our Astros, Aggies, and Longhorns clips of the week.
Caminetti was going. It's Sky to left. Deion Sanders at the wall, and Bagwell has his first Major League home run.
And for a 5th time in 9 innings, stop us if you've heard this, they've got him loaded. And here's their leader, Troy Klotch. They call him Captain Klotch and Clutch Koch. Lines in right field, base hit. Texas A&M wins. Alfred versus Peril on the very first leg. And Kentucky holding their own, but it's definitely Julian Alfred with an advantage for the Longhorns. And Texas has well then made up the stagger. They pass first, and on the outside, Georgia also going well in lane 9. But it is all Texas. If they keep it in the zone and don't drop the stick, they're going to win this 4-by-1. Now we're just looking at the clock. Gavona Davis on the anchor as always, and look at that gap. That's how superior the Longhorns are in this event. And 41-60.
We're back. Final thoughts, Andy. I want to come back to the comic book thing for a second. Thoughts on them recasting T'Challa in the new Black Panther movie? Should they have done it in the first place, or should they leave it uncast?
I don't know. I think it's hindsight to say you should have recast it. And I understand the reasons, kind of arguments both, but there was so much about Chadwick Boseman that was integral to that part, and kind of vice versa, that I think it would have felt wrong to people who see it. In hindsight, 5 years removed now, 4 years removed, you had COVID, you had a writer's strike, you had a bunch of other things going on that I think that phase of the MCU that was kind of tied after Endgame to happen was all dependent on Chadwick Boseman and Black Panther being a very central part of that. And when he died, I think a lot of things got scrapped and changed, in addition to the new restrictions for COVID and the rewrites that you have to rewrite, and just all the things that had to happen because of the pandemic. And then you add a writer's strike onto that. You add the kind of the misplaced emphasis on the TV shows versus the movies. And I think Feige and Disney got caught up like everybody else does, is let's just flood the market with product because everybody seems to be hungry for it. And they got away from the quality aspect, because there's a lot of the MCU. Not every MCU movie is great up until Endgame, but they're almost all rewatchable.
Yeah.
I'll say almost, because there's a couple real duds in there.
Iron Man 2 is the only one I don't rewatch.
But there's a bunch of quality films in there. I don't know from, I guess after Spider-Man Homecoming or No Way Home, there may be 2 what I would consider quality movies in there, maybe 3. And I don't think that's harsh, but I think the idea that Chadwick Boseman was going to lead that next phase was real. And when it went away, they didn't have a plan. I do think at this point, though, they're probably going to have to get into it because I think there's some things that they're going to try to explore in Secret Wars with the Illuminati that they've teased in the Scarlet Witch movie. He's kind of integral to how Marvel Universe works. So I think that you see that, or they're going to accelerate time when they do the soft reboot, and all of a sudden the boy that showed up at the end of the second Black Panther is going to be the Black Panther. Like, he's going to super age.
That's a superpower. I guess then last real question, Captain America, the new, what is it called now? It was called New World Order. I think it's Brave New World Order.
Brave New World.
The name, Brave New World. I'm cautiously optimistic because I love the Falcon and I love the way he's portrayed in these films. but some of it definitely looks like, I mean, they've rewritten and reshot that movie 3 times. So that never adds up to a lot of quality.
Well, what I have read about that is that some of the idea of the reshoots were a little bit overblown. It turned out to be 22 total hours of reshoots,
Okay.
which in the film industry is not a lot, but they did change some battle sequences and change some of how the story works. I'm optimistic that it looks and feels from the trailer a lot more like Winter Soldier than it did about some of the other movies. And Winter Soldier, I think, is one of the best MCU movies. So it's going to be grounded. It's going to be a political thriller. There's going to be some spy shit in it, which people like. So I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic that they capture that. I also think that it's hard. If Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford, it's going to be great. If Harrison Ford is Branch Rickey, it's going to be,
He's a great actor until he tries to act.
yeah. Just be Han Solo. That's all anybody wants to see. You can wear a leather jacket while you're doing it. You can be president while you're doing it. You can be Jack Ryan while you're doing it. Just be Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford.
No, but I think he plays a big part in it. I think that Anthony Mackie's a fantastic actor. I'm looking forward to that, and that's less than a week away.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's within the next 2 Fridays. I'm happy about that. I'm happy about the Thunderbolts coming out.
man, Thunderbolts
this
is
summer.
great to me.
Yeah, so I like the idea that they're getting away from the multiverse stuff because I think it got too convoluted. And the more grounded stories they can have, knowing this is all leading up to Secret Wars, which is the ultimate multiverse story. But it'll be interesting to see how these little pieces play into that.
Yeah, we could talk forever on where things could go on that. I love the way that they've handled U.S. Agent both in the show and because he's not a very likable character in the comics,
No.
whereas in the movie you actually, as a veteran, completely felt for him and what he was feeling the entire time, and then can understand why when your best friend gets killed, you just lose all sense of who gives a shit. So,
Yep.
Love all of that. We'll definitely be talking a lot more movies as we get closer. Andy, any final thoughts?
I'm just looking forward to baseball coming back, even if it is the Dodgers in a few days. I need pitchers and catchers. I need the catchers to bring out the loud mitts to make it feel like the pitchers are throwing better. I don't care where Alex Bregman resigns at this point. I want baseball to come back because we're about to enter the worst time of the year as far as sports goes because the Super Bowl will be over in just a few days. So football will be over. Bouncy ball. March Madness doesn't happen until March. So we've got February. We've got February to deal with, and February is the loneliest time.
It is the loneliest time. All right, for Andy, I'm Jim. We will see you guys next week. Let us know in the comments, what are you looking forward to as far as movies coming out this summer? Because like baseball, summer movie season is the best.